Hi, Denise Dryden here. I'm back in Whitefish, Montana. And for those of you who know me, I do these weekly blogs every Sunday morning, and then they're available on different websites and whatnot. So I wanted to talk about last week. Because last week I was down at my parents' house, and I did this beautiful setting in the backyard next to this wonderful redwood tree. And what I want to confess on my video was that I was completely overwhelmed. I know I said it during the presentation, and what I want to do is go back and really explore what is overwhelm on a much deeper level, okay? So if you want to go back and watch the video, you can watch it. You can watch me. I was jumping around. I didn't even do an intro. I didn't introduce myself. And I didn't exit, which, you know, in marketing strategies is like, what were you thinking? I was distracted. My eyes were flitting all over the place. I was pacing and moving around and looking up, looking over, looking all over the place. I know that I gave a really good message, and I know that it was kind of scattered and it had this frenzied energy to it, okay? And from the outside, looking in at me, you know, what it looks like is that I'm inauthentic. Like, what is she doing? She's not really there. Or that I'm manipulative, right? Like, I'm trying to keep track of a lot of things and moving details and moving energy around, which can feel manipulative to someone who's highly sensitive to that. And because I know that I went 15 minutes, I talk too much, right? I get nervous and I talk too much. So when I get blown and when I get overwhelmed, it can be very ADHD looking. It can be very scattered. It can be very shattered. So I brought a little prop, right? So, you know, I've got this very contained presentation style, you know, friendly, interesting, blah, blah, blah. And there are times when I get shattered that I get out here like this, and then I'm moving around trying to figure out what life is. And you can even imagine if some of these little core spots just sort of took off and you went off in different directions. So it's like a shattered feeling, and it takes some mindfulness and it takes some energy to bring it back into form. So I wanted to talk about that today. So if I were to define overwhelm, and I'm always going to start with the dictionary, right? It's to engulf, to bury, to deluge, to inundate, to flood, to drown, to crush, or to overcome. You know, like I'm overcome with. It's overstimulated, as we talked about last week. It's inner arousal, like too many things going on, don't know what to do. And I'm in reaction, or any of us are in reaction, and we're triggered, right? So what happens when we define sensitive is that, and I love this. I love going to the dictionary and starting with the definitions first and then sort of using them as a platform. Quick to detect or respond to slight changes, signals, or influences. It means that they're hypervigilant, highly reactive, highly responsive, and susceptible. Okay? And then the one I really like is having or displaying a quick and delicate appreciation of others' feelings. So there's this awareness that happens with the sensitive, and awareness on things on a much different level. And sensitives and overwhelm go hand in hand. They're one and the same. Overwhelm comes from someone when they're highly sensitive, right? So some clients of mine have been working also with the concept of empath, which is, what's an empath? What's the difference between an empath and a sensitive? And an empath, which this is of course, you know, like Webster's, a person with the paranormal ability to apprehend the mental or emotional state of another. They can read people, they can read situations, and they can read them astutely, right? So what I want to say is that a sensitive can be an empath, right? You know, they can have that empathic ability to read others. And empaths are always sensitives, because sensitives have this highly fine-tuned nervous system. And it means that they're able to observe and gather information, that they're constantly sorting. They're working with how to prioritize, how to bring things into order, how not to get overwhelmed. Does that make sense? So 20% of the population is sensitive. And I actually believe now that we're getting higher. And, you know, that's, I'm not a researcher. I don't do clinical studies. I just observe, and I know that the population Now, in that 15 to 25-year-old, there's a lot of sensitives in there. And this is what I do. I work with, how do you parent a sensitive? How do you understand, how do you teach a sensitive? How do you understand what happens with sensitives and, sort of what learning disabilities they present, what their diagnoses are on the outside, a lot of different things. So let's go back to this concept of overwhelm, right? So if we know that empaths and sensitives can kind of go dance hand in hand, and that empaths can be a big percentage of sensitives, and that they can read other people's energies, they can read other people's thoughts, they can understand situations on a much deeper level, they can understand environments, coffee shops, restaurants, and that they can trigger and get into overwhelm. These, this is a systems issue. This is like understanding how does my body take in information and what do I do with that? So again, like we talked about last week, and I do invite you to go back and look at last week, even though I'm dancing all over the place. They can either get overwhelmed and explode, and that explosion can be anger and try to control everything that they can, refusal, blame, defiance, or they can implode and still they're trying to control everything, and they retreat and they refuse and in a different way, and they blame. And blame is on both of those. And when you see an adolescent, or when we start to go like, oh, you do this, you do that, you do this, you do that, what's happening is we're not able to differentiate between what's coming at us and what we can read and what we can feel and what they're actually doing. Does that make sense? And sometimes, it must be absolute hell to be in a relationship with someone who can hear all of your unspoken words, right? And then react to them. So I believe that this is the influence and power of feelings. I think that the sensitive has a more accurate access to feelings, and that these feelings can be really big and they can be very overwhelming. Because sensitives, because human beings who have a higher level of sensitivity and empathic ability have a higher fine-tuned nervous system that can activate and flood and overwhelm really easily, right? That makes sense. And they can take these feelings and bring them in internally, or they can take them and feel them externally from outside, and both at the same time. So classrooms, and we've talked about this, classrooms, crowds, textures, sounds, all of that stuff can be impactful. So the more we understand how this system works, the more we know what to do. So what I want to talk about today is tools. Like if we get all this information and we feel agitated and it's not working and we ignore it, it gets louder. Just like any teenager does. Teenagers trying to let you know, or any kid, if you're a parent or if you're working in a work environment, in a collaborative setting, if something's not working and you ignore it, they just keep going louder and louder and louder until you have to deal with it, right? The thing is that if you stuff it down, it turns into disease. And disease is dis-ease. We're not at ease. Our nervous system is not at ease. It's overactive. It's in fight or flight. It's pushing all sorts of enzymes and fight or flight symptoms out of our adrenals all the time. And so we're just starting to push down all of this toxic garbage in our body, and it turns into anxiety, of course, digestive issues, gut issues, ulcers, irritable bowel, colitis. I'm even going to take a stretch and say it has to be linked on some level to autoimmune, fibromyalgia, and Crohn's. Because these are all really degenerative, exhausted systems that take a lot of gentleness and a lot of self-care to bring us back into balance, back into homeostasis, right? Makes sense. So when we're overwhelmed, I believe that the most important thing is space and time and awareness and gentleness. Space, to be, like a little bit of room, give me a little bit of space. Time, whether that's time to retreat, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, a day. I need to go over here and recalibrate, reconnect to myself. Awareness, which is what's going on? What was that? And gentleness, which is like, oh, you got overwhelmed. That's okay. That's where we do that self-compassion, that self-care. Oh, we got overwhelmed. And so the tool that I wanted to introduce is a tool that Alan Seal teaches us in the very first coaches training, and I use it a lot in my parent coaching to build awareness, which is this polarity exercise. So I'm standing up in front so I can move around a little bit. So what I do with my clients, and this is a very easy self-coaching tool, is I stand in one place and I conjure up, I bring in all of these memories or all of these feelings of something that has overwhelmed me. Whether it's a conversation or a decision I have to make or a reaction to something that happened to me, or something like as simple as with parents, all of these repetitive conflicts, problems, worries, and all of that. And we close our eyes and we stand in one place and we start to allow all of those feelings to come in and inform us. And then the cues are, where do you feel it? Do you feel it in your heart? Do you feel it in your stomach? Do your shoulders tense up? Does your neck go rigid? Does your jaw get set? Do you have this little tick up here in your eye or down here in your cheek? Are your fists clenched? Are your toes curled? Are your knees locked? You know, and our body will inform us, like, we're starting to get prepared for something to happen, right? Our body's going to tell us. And so then with the polarity, we give it a name, and that name might be overwhelmed, or overstressed, or freaked out, or play with it. You know, you can even give it a name, like, well, that's when, you know, when Denise comes, the big Denise comes in, because she gets pretty postured and ready to go when she gets overwhelmed, right? I get big, I roar. For those of you who know me, that's not a surprise. So then we give it a name, right? And then we pick a spot about 6, 8, 10 feet away, and I don't have that much space, we're going to use something. And then you imagine the complete opposite of that. And then you walk slowly and you pay attention to your body. What is my body doing? How is it informing me? Sometimes we see our entire neck and back system and our shoulders relax. So we get over on this other spot and we feel calm and we feel time and we feel space, right? And we give this a name, which might be peace or ease or love or trust or playfulness. Like, this is where Nisi shows up. This is when I'm at my best. And so then I know what my body feels like here. And then I walk back and forth between these two, right? And I get over here and it's like, oh, there it is. First place is my shoulders. Then I walk back over here and I realize, oh, it's calmer when I'm over here. My shoulders relax. So using a body cue is a really good way of sort of lasering through the overwhelm of emotions and flood. And like we were talking about earlier, it's like using a body cue. Where is this showing up in my body? What am I supposed to do, right? And then using the tools to go, it's in my neck. Put some air into my neck. Breathe. Go over to this spot that feels like ease. And let it happen. So, you know, of course, I'm talking, we have both. And one's not right and one's not wrong. It's just that we have both. So there's times when I'm going to be in ease, and sometimes I'm going to be ill at ease. Sometimes I'm calm, sometimes I'm overwhelmed. The tools that I use to go back and forth between these two and to be gentle and to understand, when this happens, I start to move towards this. When this gets too lackadaisical, I might put myself on that edge and take more risks, right? And watch what happens. So this is the kind of stuff I coach. I coach parents, I coach couples, I coach individuals, I coach young adults. You know, if you're curious, let me know. Drop me a note, ask me some questions. You can find me on DeniseDrydenCoaching.com, and I hope you have a fabulous Sunday and that you enjoyed this one. Take care. Bye-bye.